All right, let's talk about the synapse. Synapse is a junction, a meeting between neuron and neuron. Sometimes it's also between neuron and muscle. That's a special junction that we call a neuromuscular junction. Now, in a synapse, it can be represented this way. Here's one neuron synapsing with another neuron. So this area here is what we call the synapse. Okay. And this first neuron, the one that's going this way, we call this your presynaptic neuron. It's the one that will release the neurotransmitter. Over here is your postsynaptic neuron. It contains receptors that can respond to the neurotransmitter. So this one responds to the neurotransmitters which are released from the presynaptic neuron. Now, synapses structurally, can be of three types. So again, if here is a neuron, and it had dendrites here and here. So you can have a synapse where another neuron will synapse with the dendrite, okay? And that synapse there is called an axodendritic synapse, okay? Or you may have another neuron come in and synapse with the axon. That's called an axonic synapse. Or you may have a synapse with the soma. That's called an axosomatic synapse. So you have three different structural classes of synapses. You have the axodendritic, axoaxonic, and the axosomatic synapse. But no matter what kind of synapse it is, they basically the same kind of process takes place at the synapse when it's active. So let's look at the events that occur at a synapse. So events at a chemical synapse. So here is the incoming neuron. This would be a synaptic knob, and here is synapsing, let's say, with a soma. Okay, so this would be an axosomatic synapse. So here's a pre-neuron here, presynaptic neuron. This is your postsynaptic neuron. So in this synapse, the first thing that happens is, step one is action potential arrives at the axon terminal. Okay, so here it is. Come on down to the axon terminal. That's step one. Step two is this. When the action potential arrives at the axon terminal, it will trigger the opening of voltage-gated calcium channels. Okay. So step two, voltage-gated calcium channels here open to allow calcium into the synaptic knob. So here goes calcium out here. Now it enters into the cell. That's step two. Then step three, so remember you have your synaptic vesicles inside the synaptic knob containing your neurochemicals or neurotransmitters. So step three is the calcium will cause the synaptic vesicles to release the neurotransmitters. So that's step 3. Calcium causes the synaptic vesicles to merge with the membrane and release the NTs by exocytosis. So here we have step 3 is NTs are released. And you need calcium for that to happen. Without calcium, the NTs will not be released. Okay. Then step 4 is the NTs then bind to. That's step 4. They bind to your receptors on the postsynaptic neuron. And these receptors are actually ligand-gated channels. So step 4, NTs bind to ligand-gated channels, also called receptors, on the postsynaptic neuron. So here we go, they bind there. More clear. So NT binds. Much clearer there. And then that will open the gates to let the binding of the NT on the ligand-gated channel will let in ions. Okay, so ions enter. In this case, let's take sodium. Okay, so step 5. Ions enter through the LG channel, or they may even leave actually, but most times synapses, we hear it's go with it going in. So ions enter through the LG channels, and that will generate the channels to generate a local potential. So now these come in, and now you have a local potential occurring on the membrane. So these are the LPs. Then the LPs will spread. So the LPs will spread towards the trigger zone. So step 6 is LPs spread to, and again, LP is local potential. LPs spread to trigger zone to generate an action potential. So step 6, it spreads, travels without decaying enough to bring this to threshold. And once that happens, then this fires. And then that would travel down to its axon terminal and repeat the process. And then step 7, AP travels to next synapse. Okay. So let's summarize. Step 1, action potential arrives at the axon terminal. It then will trigger the opening of voltage-gated calcium channels. Calcium enters the synaptic knob to cause the synaptic vesicles to release the neurotransmitters out in the cleft. Then they cross the cleft to bind to ligand-gated channels on the postsynaptic neuron, which triggers the influx or the movement of ions across the cell membrane to generate local potential. Then that local potential will, sometimes does not, will add up, summate, add up to bring this neuron to threshold to fire its own action potential. Because once the local potential is spread enough to get to the trigger zone and bring that trigger zone to threshold, then it will fire, and then the process will repeat itself at the next junction. Okay, so that is the events at a synapse. Okay, all right, let's pause.